The rain hadn't stopped in hours, turning the narrow, cracked road into a slick ribbon of mud and shadows. Marcus Holloway gripped the steering wheel tighter, eyes scanning the gloom as his old taxi groaned over the uneven asphalt. That's where he saw her, a German shepherd sitting perfectly still in the middle of the road, ears pricked, eyes locked on him. Something dangled from her jaws, a bundle, soaked and trembling. His pulse jumped. He should have driven past, ignored it, but he couldn't. And the moment he stepped out, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and something else, something faintly metallic, he realized his life had already changed. If you want, you can like and subscribe to keep up with the story. You won't want to miss what comes next. The German shepherd didn't move as Marcus stepped out of the taxi. Rain splattered his jacket, soaking to the worn fabric, and his boots sank into mud with every careful step. He studied the dog's eyes, dark, intelligent, and terrifyingly aware, and the object clamped tightly in her mouth. At first glance, it looked like a bundle of rags, but as he approached, the unmistakable whimper of a human cry pierced the patter of rain. "Hey! Hey, girl," he said, his voice tight, uneven, breaking against the storm. The dog tilted her head, but didn't advance or retreat. She simply waited, as if she were guarding something too fragile, too precious to risk letting go. Marcus knelt, mud soaking his knees, and squinted at the bundle. A small face peeked from the wet cloth, eyes wide with fear. "It's okay. I've got you," he whispered, though his own pulse rattled in his ears like the storm around them. Carefully, he pried the wet cloth from the dog's jaws. The child inside, a girl no older than 7, shivered violently. "Don't worry," Marcus said, wrapping her in his jacket. "You're safe now." The dog watched the exchange with an intensity that made Marcus's skin prickle. Her loyalty was palpable, almost human, but her eyes were haunted. She had seen more than she should have. "Where were my parents?" the girl stammered. Her voice was a fragile whisper, raw with panic. Marcus shook his head. "I don't know. Can you tell me your name?" "Lila," she breathed. "Lila." The name hit Marcus with an odd resonance, though he couldn't place why. He glanced at the German shepherd, who now stepped closer, tail low but steady. Something about the way she moved suggested she'd been running for hours, or maybe days. Every muscle was tense, every breath calculated. Marcus grabbed an umbrella from the back seat and tried to shield them both from the relentless rain. As he led them back to the taxi, he noticed the girl's clothes mud-streaked, torn, and a small, jagged cut on her forehead. A bruise was forming on her cheek. The realization struck Marcus like a thunderclap. Someone had been after her. Or worse, someone had already found her, and she had escaped by pure luck, or maybe thanks to this dog. Driving through the winding, fog-swathed roads of Cedar Hollow, a town so small that most residents knew one another by face, not name, Marcus kept glancing at the rear-view mirror. Lila's small hands clutched his jacket. Her breathing had started to slow, though her wide eyes never stopped scanning the darkness outside the car. "Did someone hurt you, Lila?" he asked gently, careful not to frighten her further. She shook her head, eyes filling with tears. He said if I screamed, he'd come back." Marcus's stomach tightened. Who said that?" She pressed her lips together, refusing to answer, and then, almost as if the words were too dangerous to speak aloud, she shook her head again. Marcus's mind raced. Cedar Hollow was usually quiet, almost painfully so. Nothing like this had ever happened, at least not that he'd heard, but there was no mistaking the fear etched into her small frame. Someone in this town wanted her hurt, and this dog, this German shepherd, had somehow intercepted it. By the time they reached his modest, run-down apartment at the edge of town, night had fallen fully. Street lights flickered through the fog like distant, trembling candles. Marcus carried Lila inside, dry her off with blankets, and setting her on the couch. The dog, still soaked, sat at the door like a sentinel, eyes never leaving the girl. Marcus considered calling the authorities, but hesitated. Cedar Hollow's police were stretched thin, and something in the way the German shepherd had appeared, as if delivering a warning, made him pause. He didn't trust the system to protect her, not fully. He poured 2 mugs of warm tea, setting one beside Lila. "Drink this, okay?" he said softly. She sipped slowly, and for a moment, the storm outside seemed distant. "I don't understand," she whispered. "She just brought me. I don't know why." Marcus knelt beside her, gripping her tiny hand. "She knows things, Lila. She knows who to trust. And right now, she trusts me to help you." The dog patted closer, nudging her nose against Lila's hand, a small gesture of reassurance. Marcus watched them, feeling an odd weight in his chest. Something about this moment, the storm, the fear, the quiet bond forming, made him certain that nothing in his life would ever be the same again. Hours passed in tense silence. Rain drummed against the windows like a heartbeat, relentless and accusing. Marcus couldn't sleep. His mind kept replaying the sight of the dog in the road, the tiny, trembling girl, the sense of danger that clung to them like a shadow. Someone had tried to hurt her, and the question of why or who gnawed at him. By the early hours, exhaustion finally won, and Marcus allowed himself to close his eyes. But even in dreams, the storm didn't stop, and the dog's unblinking gaze haunted the edges of his mind. A sudden knock on the door jolted him awake. Heart hammering, he moved cautiously, glancing at the dog, who growled softly, low and warning. Marcus peered through the peephole. A man stood there, drenched in rain, eyes dark and calculating. "Marcus Alloway?" the man called, voice smooth, controlled. "I need to talk to you about the girl you found." Marcus's hand tightened on the doorframe. He didn't open it. The storm outside had stopped for a moment, leaving an eerie calm. But the danger, he could feel it, was only beginning. If you want to follow the rest of the story, you can like and subscribe. The truth about Lila and the German Shepherd is far more chilling than what you've seen so far. Marcus didn't sleep much after the knock. The man at the door had left a lingering unease, like a shadow pressed against the walls of his apartment. Lila clutched the dog, who had curled protectively around her legs, and Marcus realized just how much of a fortress this creature had become. He pored over every detail in his mind, the timing, the abandoned road, the girl's terrified expression, and an uncomfortable realization settled. Whatever had happened to Lila, it wasn't random. Morning arrived muted and gray, fog curling through the town like smoke. Marcus wrapped himself in a coat and led Lila to the small diner on Main Street. The German Shepherd followed, moving silently, a shadow beside them. The townsfolk cast curious glances, but no one approached. Cedar Hollow was a town where everyone knew everyone, yet there was an unspoken fear that seemed to settle over strangers, over anything unusual. Inside the diner, the smell of coffee and fried dough was almost comforting, though Marcus couldn't relax. He slid into a booth with Lila across from him, the dog obediently sitting under the table. "Do you know anyone who would hurt you?" Marcus asked gently. Lila shook her head, lips pressed tight. Her eyes darted to the window, as if expecting someone to appear from the mist outside. I think he's watching me," she whispered. The words were small, but heavy, carrying a weight Marcus couldn't ignore. Before he could respond, the diner door chimed. A tall man in a rain-soaked coat stepped inside, scanning the room. Marcus froze. The man wasn't the same one from last night, though there was something familiar in the way he moved, careful, measured, predatory. The German Shepherd stiffened under the table, ears flattening slightly. Marcus stood, subtly positioning himself between Lila and the newcomer. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice calm but firm. The man's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "I believe you found something that doesn't belong to you," he said, eyes flicking to Lila, then to the dog. "I think it's time we talked." Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Something in the man's tone, his deliberate patience, made him certain this conversation would not end politely. Lila's small hand found Marcus's, squeezing tightly. The dog let out a low growl, warning clear and unyielding. "I won't let you hurt her," Marcus said, and he didn't bother hiding the tremor in his voice. The man tilted his head, studying him like a chess piece. "Hurt her? Marcus, that's not my intention. I merely want to retrieve what belongs to me." "What belongs to you?" Marcus echoed, suspicion sharp in his tone. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. Marcus's eyes narrowed. The cover was plain, but the contents, documents, photographs, letters, spilled a story more sinister than he had imagined. Pictures of Lila, tracking her movements over months. Letters detailing threats, careful, meticulous instructions for keeping her isolated, hidden, and Marcus realized with horror the possibility of something worse. The German shepherd barked, suddenly and sharply, drawing attention from other diners. Marcus looked down to see her standing, hackles raised, teeth bared, but controlled, as though she were assessing the threat and calculating the best moment to act. "I warned her," the man said quietly, almost admiringly, but she escaped. "And now here we are." Marcus's mind raced. He didn't fully understand this man, but he could see the malice in every deliberate movement, in every calm word. He made a decision, fueled by instinct and a protective fury. He would not allow this stranger to claim Lila. "Get out," Marcus said, voice low but unwavering. "Leave, or I call the police." The man chuckled, a sound that grated against the diner's quiet hum. "Police? They won't help you. Not here. Not for her." He placed the folder on the table, then left as silently as he had arrived, leaving a lingering threat hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Marcus stared at the folder. Slowly, he opened it. Inside were details that made his blood run cold. Records showing Lila's family, her movements, and fragments of a plan Marcus couldn't yet piece together. Someone powerful, patient, and ruthless had been watching her, orchestrating events for reasons he could not fathom. He glanced at the German shepherd, who was now sitting calmly beside Lila, her gaze fixed on the door as if expecting the man's return. Marcus realized the dog had saved the girl, perhaps more than once. The truth was clear. Lila's survival wasn't luck. It was strategy, instinct, and unwavering loyalty from a creature who understood danger better than any human. Hours later, back at his apartment, Marcus spread the documents across the kitchen table. Lila, tired but still anxious, clung to the dog. The rain had stopped outside, but the fog lingered, a murky reminder that clarity was still out of reach. "I'm going to find out who did this," Marcus said firmly, voice resolute. "And I'm going to keep you safe. No matter what." The dog whined softly in agreement, as if acknowledging his promise. But even as Marcus made plans, doubts gnawed at him. Cedar Hollow was small, quiet, and supposedly safe, but something deep in the foggy streets whispered otherwise. Lila's captor, or captors, were patient, smart, and perhaps closer than he realized. And the German shepherd, who had delivered Lila into his care, held secrets of her own, secrets that would soon demand answers. By nightfall, Marcus had called in favors, making discreet inquiries, scanning for anything that could give him a lead. Every shadow seemed longer, every movement suspicious. Cedar Hollow was no longer just a sleepy town. It had become a puzzle, each piece more dangerous than the last. As he finally collapsed into a chair, exhaustion and fear weighing him down, Marcus knew one thing. Whatever storm had brought Lila to him, it wasn't finished. And the German shepherd, silent, watchful, and relentless, would be the key to uncovering the truth. Outside, the fog thickened, curling to the streets like a living thing, and Marcus realized the most terrifying part was not knowing when it would strike again, or who would be waiting in the shadows when it did. If you're following the story, like and subscribe. You'll see the next chapter reveals secrets no one in Cedar Hollow wants to face. The fog had turned the roads outside Marcus's apartment into a gray, shifting blur. Every sound, dripping water, the distant screech of a branch in the wind, even the quiet hum of his old radiator, felt magnified. Lila slept fitfully on the couch. The German shepherd curled at her feet, eyes half closed but alert. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, the folder of documents spread before him like a map to a dark, twisted world. Each photo, each note, each carefully logged observation made his jaw ache. He hadn't slept in 2 days, and his mind was a whirlwind of theories and fears. Someone in Cedar Hollow wanted Lila gone, or worse, and the deeper he dug, the more impossible the situation seemed. A soft thud from the window made him jump. The dog's ears pricked, and she moved silently, low to the ground, toward the source. Marcus followed cautiously. Outside, a shadow lurked, half hidden in the fog. He pressed his back against the wall, heart hammering. Whoever it was, they weren't here to talk. The figure moved with calculated precision, almost human in its patience. Marcus grabbed a flashlight and swung it toward the window. The light caught a man crouched near the sill. Startled, hands frozen in mid-motion. Without hesitation, Marcus opened the window and lunged. The man twisted, and in the struggle, the German shepherd bounded forward, teeth flashing, knocking the intruder back. Marcus felt a sharp sting on his forearm, small but searing, but adrenaline drowned the pain. He pinned the man as the dog growled, a low, menacing rumble that seemed to shake the fog itself. "You're done," Marcus said through gritted teeth. "You leave or you don't leave at all." The man laughed, a dark, bitter sound. "You think this ends with me?" he spat. "You don't even know the half of it." Before Marcus could respond, the man's face shifted, the mask of cruelty breaking for a fraction of a second. Marcus saw something in his eyes, fear. Not fear of Marcus, but of the German shepherd. The dog had been more than a savior. She had been a weapon, a guardian, and a silent observer of events he could barely comprehend. Hours later, the man was restrained, waiting for the authorities, though Marcus made sure Cedar Hollow's police didn't have the full story. The documents revealed the truth. Lila's father, a man once trusted in the community, had orchestrated a series of threats against her. Driven by money, secrets, and a twisted sense of control, he had enlisted others to ensure her disappearance, thinking no one would intervene. Marcus stared at Lila as she woke, the morning light filtering through the fog, pale but steady. Her eyes met his, wide and cautious. The German shepherd nudged her shoulder, a silent reassurance. "Is it over?" she asked. Marcus nodded slowly. "Yes, he won't hurt you anymore. Not ever." Tears glimmered in Lila's eyes, and Marcus felt the weight of relief and grief collide. She had survived horrors that no child should ever endure, and yet here she was, alive, breathing, tethered to life by the loyalty of a dog and the courage of a man willing to step into the storm. The German shepherd sat quietly beside them, her gaze steady, almost solemn, as if acknowledging the resolution of a chapter that had demanded more than words could convey. In the days that followed, Cedar Hollow returned to its sleepy rhythm, though Marcus knew nothing would ever feel the same. The townsfolk whispered about the miracle dog and the brave taxi driver who would save a child, but Marcus didn't seek recognition. The real reward was quieter, deeper, the knowledge that it made a difference, that trust, human and animal, could defy darkness. One evening, Marcus found Lila sketching in her room, her drawings filled with the dog in him, their faces entwined with shadows and light. He realized that survival wasn't just about escaping danger. It was about remembering, healing, and forming bonds that no evil could break. The German shepherd lay by the fireplace, eyes slowly closing, a faint growl of contentment rumbling in her chest. Marcus knelt beside her, hand resting on her wet, coarse fur. "You saved her," he whispered, "and us all." Outside, the fog lifted entirely, revealing a small town bathed in pale sunlight. Cedar Hollow was quiet again, but the echoes of fear, courage, and love lingered, suspended in the air. For Marcus, Lila, and the German shepherd, life would continue, cautious, scarred, but profoundly alive. And though the shadows of the past remained, they no longer ruled the present. The storm had passed, leaving a fragile, unspoken peace, stitched together by loyalty, courage, and the unexpected bond between a man, a child, and a dog who had carried more than just a bundle in her mouth. She had carried hope.